Hello and welcome to our Voices in Montessori podcast, brought to you by the Greenspring Center for Lifelong Learning. As Dr. Montessori tells us, an education capable of saving humanity is no small undertaking. We agree. So let's get to work. My name is Tamara Sheesley Balis, and I'm delighted to have today Veronica Burbano with me. We're talking about cultivating children's self-control in children's house communities. Veronica has over 16 years of experience as an educator. After taking her Montessori training in 2012, Veronica established the bilingual Casa de Niños program at the Amherst Montessori School, where she worked for over 10 years. She has offered consultation services to new guides at the National Center for Montessori in the public sector and the Cambridge Montessori Institute. Veronica currently serves as an AMI assistant trainer at the Montessori Training Center of the Northeast in Hartford. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Veronica. I'm so happy to have you and so excited to have this conversation.
Yes, it's so relevant.
It's so relevant. Our children are so inundated right now. Mm-hmm. Let's be clear. They are inundated by a culture that is focused on the individual and really on, oftentimes they can come from environments that are really entitled and there's immediate gratification. And how are they going to ever build those skills, right? I know Veronica and I actually worked together years and years and years ago, but I know that you do a beautiful job in cultivating self-control and will in the classroom, and that it's such a critical component for these children for their lifetime. It is the sensitive period for children to build a skill that they will have for the rest of their life, right? Like this is not a just right now skill. It's something that will fuel them and serve them for their entire lifetime. So talk to me about what supports the development of the child's will and self-control.
Well, I'm so glad that you just began when you were talking, you were just saying how this period is so essential for the child, because Maria Montessori tells us that the child develops their will that those first 6 years. And if you see and all of us Montessorians have seen the bulb chart, we can see how the development of all those psychic organs like the memory and language and the will, and they develop during those first 6 years. And we have research backing that up. We have, what's her name? Dr. Adele, let me remember her name. I have it somewhere here. Adele Diamond from the British Columbia University. She tells us that executive functioning and development of self-control happens those first years, first 6 years. So you are so right. That is crucial that we support the child in developing this skill right at this stage of development. So how do we do this? How does it happen? Like, how can we as adults support our children when they are in this critical period of their lives, right? So the will is not developed when we are born. It is a muscle. It is a muscle that needs to be strengthened. And if you think about yourself, and I think about me, like I'm trying to build stamina to see if one day I can run a 5K. And every day I go out and I jog and I go to the gym, and I'm trying to strengthen muscles of my legs, especially to see if I can run, longer and longer distances, right? The same thing, the same work that I'm doing every day by strengthening my muscles to run this 5K is something that we need to help the child build, and they need to develop the will. That is a muscle that is only going to be developed by choice, by activity. So if we're giving them the opportunities to make choices, the child is going to exercise that muscle. But a lot of adults don't give the child the opportunity to choose. A lot of adults make the choices for them. They tell them where to sit, what shoes to wear. what toys to play with, who they can be with at that time, at what time to eat, at what time to sleep, like they don't have choices. Their whole life is propelled by an adult telling them what to do all day. So how can we support the child to develop their will if we are the ones that are making choices for them? So the step one, choices. Give the child choices. So that's the first thing, right?
And I just want to say, can I just add one piece to that? That can happen whether you're in a Montessori classroom or not.
Exactly.
Children can have choices, and you can develop that autonomy and that independence and that thinking, right? Whether you're in a Montessori classroom or not. So I just wanted to underscore that we're talking about Montessori classrooms here. This is a podcast for Montessori educators who are doing such important work. And if you're a preschool educator listening to this and you don't have Montessori, a lot of what Veronica is going to share today are things that you can be implementing and will serve your children regardless of whether you have the training or the materials in the environment.
Exactly. So choices are something that I was able to do as a parent, and teachers, even if they are not Montessorians, can do in their classroom. So we have to give choices to children as much as we can. However, I do want to talk about the types of choices that we are going to give children, right? Because think about, so let's say you come to me and you say, Veronica, you know what? Today I want you to fly me to Ecuador. That's where I come from, by the way. I'm Ecuadorian. That's why you're going to notice this refined accent. But
beautiful, Veronica. I really do. I love it.
I'm proud of my accent, though. Anyway, so let's say you tell me one day, you know what, Veronica, I feel like going to Ecuador. I want you to fly me there. Let's get on an airplane. Take me there. I'll be like, you know what, Tamara, I would love to do it, but I would love to show you my country, but I don't have an airplane. I don't know how to fly an airplane. Like that's not a choice for me. You're asking me to do something, but I don't have the skills, the ability. I can't do it. So, but if you said, you know what, Veronica, I just bought this table and it's old because it was, it was a used table, but I've been noticing, I've been looking at what you've been doing in the past year, and you've been refinishing all these furniture, and you sand it, and then you strip it, and you paint it, and you know what? I think you could refinish this piece for me. Would you please, make this table beautiful, because it just needs some love. I'll be like, of course, Tamara, I love doing that. Thanks for noticing that I've been doing this work for 2 years. You've been noticing how I've been refinishing pieces. Of course I can do it. I have the skills and I love doing that. I'll do it for you, right? So do you see the difference? When we're going to give a choice to a child, we need to make sure that they have the skills, that they have the capability, the experience to be able to perform to what we're asking them to do. The choice that we're giving them is something that is going to match their ability and their interest. If we give them a choice that it's too hard for them, too challenging for them, they're not going to do it. Like when I said, you asked me to fly you to Ecuador, right? I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. I don't have the skill. Also the interest. If we're asking a child, maybe they have the skills and abilities, but they don't have the interest. So we as adults, and we can do that as parents, as teachers, especially as Montessorians, we need to observe the child, and we need to see what are the skills that this child has already acquired. What are the interests that they have been showing us they have, by watching them, what they observe, by things that they tell us. We have to be scientific observers. Maria Montessori talked about scientific observation over and over in her writings, because it's the only way that you're going to link the child to just the right activity that is going to support their natural development. Because every time the child is linked to an activity and they make the choice to do it and complete it from beginning to end, they're strengthening their will, their self-control. Right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I love that description. I think that that's such an important piece, because it brings us back to the materials, What you're really saying is that a piece of their self-control and will is coming out of their connection to the materials and their development of themselves, their self-construction.
Exactly. So if we're talking about the child's self-construction, and part of that self-construction is developing that will, is how are we going to support the child in constructing their personality? How do we do that? They have to develop language. They have to develop movement. They have to develop their will. They have to develop their memory. All those psychic organs need to develop through the work they're going to do, the purposeful activity they're going to do with us in the environment. So we have to connect them. And we need to understand that it's going to take time. We cannot expect children to come in where their self-control, their will is fully developed. They're going to come with, and Maria Montessori, there's this concept of impulses and inhibition. The child, some children are going to be high in impulse control or high in inhibition. So, for example, a child that has been told no many, many times, don't touch that, don't climb on that, don't talk too loud, and here's a lot of no's, they're going to have a high inhibition. That means that they're going to be afraid to try new things, because what they've heard before at home is, don't do it, don't do anything, because you're going to get in trouble if you try anything. So they have high inhibition. Now we have the other child that has high impulses, right? Is that child that just says, I want to work with water. And they see another child with a bucket filled with water, and they just go and grab it from the other child. They're like, oh, because I just need water. I want to touch water. I want to pour water. My impulses, my body's telling me I need water right now. And they just do it. So they have high impulses, right? Well, what do we want? We want the child to regulate that and come and be in the middle, right? Where they have enough inhibition to control themselves and not just grab whatever somebody else is using, but enough impulse that has so that they have a force that drives them to try new things. Okay, so that's where we want the child to be. So how do we help that child that has high inhibition, that never wants to try anything? By giving just the right choices in the beginning, just something that we know that they can do, that they're going to feel confident about doing, right? And we have to observe them, and we have to talk to the families. Maybe this child is a child that loves nature, and we know that if we connect them with an activity that it has to do with animals, maybe a language material, or maybe a material in botany, we know that child is going to be connected, and then we're just going to give them just the right challenge, and then a little more, and then a little more, and we'll build that self-confidence. So the child that had high inhibition begins to have more impulse to try new things, right? What about the child that has high impulse? I had many of those children, and so they come,
and they have more impact on the classroom too.
Exactly.
Right?
I had a child that came in with a pencil and started poking all the children with a pencil, or another one that was biting all the children.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, this child has high impulses, right? What am I going to do? I have to channel that energy, right? Because we know that the child is driven to work. They have human tendencies, and they are driven to work and self-perfect and construct themselves. That's what they want. All these energy that's coming out just needs to be focused for something purposeful that will help them. So what do, right? So in the beginning, you're going to use a lot of redirection, and we have so many little tricks under our sleeve, depending on and that's when you need to learn who this child is. If it's a child that is very musical, maybe you're going to do lots of movement and singing. If this is a child that is very energetic, maybe I had a child that we had a lot of mulch that every year was delivered to our school because it had to be spread all around, right? As part of the regulations, we had to have certain amount of inches of mulch outside, right? So we had a space that had some cones, and we had a little wheelbarrow, and the child had a little shovel, and his purposeful activity was to spread the mulch in the area that was right outside my classroom. And he was digging and digging and using all those muscles. And we did that high intensity activity for as long as he wanted. But then after that, he came in the classroom. This was outside, right? He came inside the classroom. And then I feel like his body, his muscles did the work. The muscles were used, and now he was ready for some mental work. So he digged in and he wanted to do math. Like he was like, after that, he was just wanted to do math or sensorial after that. And it was, and that's how I connected him. And I knew I had to contain that energy first. In the winter, since we didn't have the good weather, we did the same thing, but with the snow. He had to shovel the snow and get the driveway cleaned. That was something we did. And then when he came back in the classroom, he was just ready to do math or language or any other activity, art, anything, practical life. But so you need to see the child. You need to observe them and try to see, how can I link this child to just the right activity that is going to help them. And Maria Montessori talks about what Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi talks in his book, The Flow. I don't know if you read that book. Talks about flow, but Maria Montessori talks about the integration of the personality. When the child finds an activity where his mind and his hands are connected, the body and the mind are connected, and it's just the right challenge, the child will enter the state of flow, or Maria Montessori said normalization. And we Montessorians say the child is following their natural path.
That's right.
They're following their natural path. When they get to that point, then we know that these characteristics of joy and contentment and self-regulation and self-discipline come about, because the child is just in just the right place. And it takes time. It takes a lot of practice from the adult to get to that point with children. But that's the work that we have to do. So, so when you talk about things that will support self-regulation, you have to really see that those three components that we all Montessorians know are in place and are being thoughtfully prepared. And I'm talking about the physical aspect of the environment, the community of children, and the prepared adult. So if those three aspects are not prepared properly, we are going to see children that lack self-control. Because let's say, and I'm going to give you an example, if I'm talking about the physical environment, my environment has too many open areas, like a few shelves, a few tables, and just a lot of open areas. That's going to be an invitation to have a runway. Like, I'm going to see children just breezing through there and trying to just knock everything, because I'm the one that did not prepare that environment to create enough to put shelves in a place where the child would navigate and try to avoid bumping into things, right? Because if I have to walk around tables, walk around shelves, my body is having to control where they move. And that's self-control of movement, right? That's the self-control of movement. But if I leave it too open, children are just going to be running around, right? So that's the physical environment, right? How we organize things in the environment. We know that the development of the will or self-control comes from being able to organize our minds. If we say that we build self-control, the development of the will happens when we have choices and we cannot find the material ready. If the material is not complete, if it's not color-coded, if I want to use an activity and I don't have the towel that I need to dry the table, or the brush that I wanted to scrub it, or there's not enough polish, or I wanted to make a collage, but the scissors are just not working. I wanted to make that choice. I wanted to be independent and develop my will, my self-control, but since my environment is not prepared, it's an impediment for my development. So, and that's an example of the physical environment, right? That we want to have everything in order. We want to have a nice flow in the environment for children that is not too open for children to be running around, or too many tables or shelves where children are going to be actually bumping to each other all the time, right? We have to be careful about what the materials are child size, right? That they can use it, that they're not too heavy or too big for them. You know, we're creating an environment that it's the house of the children. It's la casa de niños. It's for them. So everything should be child size. So that's the physical environment. But there's this intangible aspect of the environment, which is that sense of safety, right? If a child does not feel safe, secured, nurtured in an environment, they cannot learn, you know. If the teacher is anxious, is constantly stressed out by other children, and the child is going to sense that. So, you know, I practice mindfulness, and I think I really started practicing mindfulness when I became a Montessori guide, because I needed to leave all my anxieties, problems, challenges outside the door. When I came into the classroom, I had to be the most peaceful, Zen presence for the children, because they needed me in that space, in that headspace, in order to guide them and love them and show them just the right work that day. So there's this spiritual preparation that needs to happen in each one of us when we're working with children, where we see the child not as what they are right now, but the child that is there, that is going to be. We never lose faith in the child. And it's hard, especially when you have little Johnny poking with a pencil, poking Mary with a pencil. You know, you're like, oh my goodness, like, when is this child going to stop doing that? And so, and I'll tell you, you know, I lost faith for a time where I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna help this child. Like, there's no way, I can't do it. But then, you know, then I went back to the theory, and I went back to Maria Montessori's teachings, because she wrote 2 books, The Creative Development of the Child, Volume 1 and 2. And those are a lot of the lectures from India. And she talks about all these letters from all these teachers that she received, and all of them are telling them the same things that the teachers are telling us right now about the child, the little Johnny that's poking or biting. And Maria Montessori gave them the same advice. She always went back to, what do we know about the child? Are you really observing the child? All the children have the same sensitive periods and the same human tendencies, and they all want the same thing. Now, what are you doing to create that space for the child? Because the environment it's like a hospital. She said that the environment is the most therapeutic place for a child, especially for a child that is dysregulated. So if your child is not regulating in your environment, that means that hospital is not well prepared, that there's something missing. It's either you have to work on yourself as a guide, and there has to be a lot of spiritual preparation and a lot of work that needs to happen within the adult. Maybe it's the environment, maybe it's the physical environment, and you have to take a look. Do I have all the materials? Do I have everything is complete? Everything is color coded? Is it beautiful? Is it in good repair? Or maybe it's the community of children. Maybe all of your community is 3-year-olds. I'm like, no, oh, okay. There's no older children that are inspiring and allowing the younger child to strive to become like the older child, because they're the role models, right? And the child has the observant mind. They are integrating all the behaviors that they're noticing around them. So if you have a community of 4 and 5s that it's already regulated or normalized, because you've had those grace and courtesies in place, the younger children are going to just follow that. Maybe not the first year, maybe it's going to take, you know, the second year we'll see that, but it'll happen. But if you only have 3-year-olds, it's not going to happen.
I want to add one component too that I've seen. I've seen people who, first of all, I completely agree with you about the spiritual work of the adult. And I think we as Montessorians, and really teachers in general who do that work, the beauty is we get to be better people as we require that of ourselves. I am 100% a better human being than I would have been if I hadn't worked with children, because they deserve that. They deserve my best self, which means I have to rise to the occasion. And I think there's also, so you can have a beautifully prepared environment, a spiritually prepared adult, but if you are not observing and meeting the child with the correct challenge, I watch students really spin their wheels and not be challenged because you have adults who want to hold on to too much control, and they're like parsing out the lessons instead of really just feeding them and fueling them. And then there's the folks who are the jump is too big and they haven't looked and really specified the skill that needs to be built step by step, like you were talking about with your 5K. You know, you're not going to go from sitting on the couch to running 3 miles the first day, right? You have to do step by step. So I also want to really underscore what you're talking about with observation and having that allegiance to truly watching each child as an individual, which means you have to create a classroom environment where you can step away for 5 to 10 minutes a day, at least, to allow for that observation. So, and what I love, you're actually, one of the things we didn't talk about, and I'm sorry to sidestep again here, but Veronica's one of our mentors, which don't you want to hang out with her? So she and Julia Volkman are doing the primary mentoring community. And I want to underscore something that Julia said long ago about how the materials really are, there are self-discipline, right? And if you have a child who oftentimes we are the impediment, even in not observing. And what she had us do when she first came in, I think my first year at Greenspring, I brought her in to consult, and she sat in every classroom and she had the lead guide sit next to her for half an hour and observe the classroom. And she said, the children will show us what needs. She said, I'm not watching you as the lead. I'm watching the children. The children will show us. And I can tell you, every lead guide was like, I can't step away for 30 minutes and watch. And every single one of them gained so much value out of sitting back and watching and seeing what the children actually showed when they weren't there, helping the children navigate the environment. So I want to really underscore that piece, that is such an critical component to children building self-control, is giving them, really meeting them with that exact right work. And that's what Dr. Montessori told us over and over, is if the child is struggling with self-discipline, how are we meeting them with the work? The work is the balancer.
Exactly. And now that you're talking about finding just the right work for the child, and we talked about that spiritual preparation, there's also the practical preparation, because sometimes we don't challenge the child because we ourselves are not prepared to present that material. A lot of us took the training, and there were some lessons that we were like, I don't even want to see that. You just keep going and you just don't show that activity to the child because you yourself have not practiced or prepared for it. Like the bells are an example of a material that has so many presentations, and the scope is so amazing. The children can be composing beautiful pieces at the end, but you have to be comfortable playing the bells. You have to know the pitches and the names of the notes, and you have to know how to set the notes on the staff board. And a lot of guides don't take the time, especially if you are not someone that has had music lessons before. It's hard for a person that has never had a music background to learn all that. So you need to every day take time to take a piece of material and practice with it. And not only, and the other thing is that what I see is that the guides will present that initial presentation, and that's it. Especially in sensorial, they forget about the memory games, they forget about following exercises, all those extensions, and then the child is missing out. The child is not getting the depth and the breadth of the material. They're just getting just a little glimpse of that material. And if we want the child to abstract the quality of that material and really refine their sensorial perception, we need to show them everything they can do with that material, everything, they can do with that pink tower, everything they can do with the Nobles cylinders, everything they can do with the graded figures, everything they can do with that decanomial square. Like there's so many following exercises, and we just give that initial presentation. We're deserving the child. The child needs to know everything, and we have so much in our albums, and we need to know every single presentation because the child deserves it. Because those children that are acting out or bothering others is because they have a hunger for work and their brain is not getting the right food. And it's our fault because we either don't know how to present the material, either we are not observing the child enough to connect them with the right link. And it's all about the adult not doing what they're supposed to do. So it is a lot of work, hours of work. Like I would work all day in the classroom, and then I would work again at home, because I would check all the observations that I did, make all my reflections, create my lesson plan for the following week or the next day, however you prepare your lessons. But they were all based on my observations. I never, ever just gave a lesson just like, oh, this child is wandering around, they need something to do. No, all the lessons were well prepared based on a scientific observation previously made. If you're not doing that, you're just a traditional teacher. You're just following a curriculum, and you're just, oh, today we're talking about, I don't know, the mammals. Tomorrow we'll talk about reptiles, instead of following the child's interest, right?
Well, and I think one of the things I've been rereading, Education and Peace by Dr. Montessori, which is just such a powerful book. I have to admit that when I first went through training, I don't really think I read it because I don't remember it being so powerful, right? Maybe I skimmed it, but gosh, she's a powerful human. And and part of what she's talking about is, and I don't think I ever really understood it till this time, that the reason the work that we're doing is really spiritual work with the children. We're constructing, when she says the new man, she's talking about our work really providing people for the planet who will create peace in the world. And how we do that is it comes out of how we treat them, how we meet them, how we support them. All of those pieces are actually fuel them. And we're not going to create peace out of politics because people have not been raised, they haven't been educated in a way that actually helps them to self-actualize and to understand how to be in community. And so when she's talking about education, it is a spiritual calling. This is not spiritual as in dogmatic. It's spiritual as in, this is our mission, folks. Like we are doing something that changes the world. It's changing the landscape of the world with every single child who gets the value of this. So I want to, part of why I have to say that is because I know it's hard. That's why there are not more Montessori guides. This is hard work, but I do believe deeply that it evolves us also, like that it's our evolution as well. It's our formation as spiritual beings to be so deeply in this work and to be so committed to the lives of these children that we are willing to look in the mirror over and over and over and look at the environment over and over and do the work when we go home every night and just make the world a better place.
Yes, beautifully said, Tamara. And I just wanted to piggyback on that because to me, it's like a cycle. Like and this happened to me all the time in the classroom, is you inspire children to connect with an activity. And then once they're connected and you see the result, you see this new child emerging, this new child that it has this empathy for the others, this new child that is ready to pitch in and help, this new child that is calm, this new child that is focused, this new child that has this self-discipline. And you see that as an adult, that inspires you and it fuels you to motivate the child to connect them to purposeful work again. So it's a cycle. They inspire you, you inspire them, and they inspire you. And it just keeps going around and keeps going around. And then when you see your whole community getting to that place, and after 3 years, if you've been lucky to be complete those 3 years with your children, and you see this micro community that could be what the world looks like, that's it. That's when you know this is what we need to do, and this is what humanity needs. Because seeing selfless individuals that are able to put their needs, the others' needs above theirs, and not because they are sacrificing themselves, not because of that. It's because that they see that the needs of others are for the needs of everyone, are going to support the community, and it's going to take the community to a higher place. If I give to others, I am serving myself as well. Because you see that, and you go, this is where we're at right now. It's like we're going to be in this higher level where serving others becomes part of who we are. Because we don't see, there's not going to be this selfishness within us. It's all about, how can I make my community better? Where is the need? And you're ready to jump and do something about it. And that's how these children come out, with that sense of love for others, their love for the environment, love for their peers, love for their teachers. And of course, then you are inspired. And love for themselves, of course.
Self-knowledge, right? Because part of, I mean, I read this study a couple years ago. When we sit on the couch, when we eat a bag of potato chips, we watch our favorite show, we're happy then, and the happiness lasts for about 10, 15 minutes afterwards. When we contribute to another human being, when we make a meaningful difference in another human being's life, the happiness lasts for 2 weeks, can last for up to 2 weeks. So giving in that way, having our children know how to give, how to be of service, how to love, how to tend to others, we're actually fueling their internal well-being. Rather than having these poor little people be me people, which we all know the me people in the world, and the me people are never happy. They don't, there's not, they can't, unless, I mean, they're happy when they get their new this or their new that, but it tends to be, and our culture has gone off the deep end with this, right? We are a culture that right now, if you really watch, we're being told to buy things to fuel our happiness and to fuel our, you're not happy, buy this new watch. You're not happy, go buy these new pair of boots. Whatever it is, put on this makeup, all these things. And rather than it be, you're not happy, let's do the spiritual work. What are you doing to fuel, to really take care of the world? How do you be mission oriented? How do you tend to yourself in a way that is meaningful? How do you not numb it, right? Don't go home and drink a bottle of wine. Actually dig into what's going on behind that. And so many of what children and adults now are hearing is around the me, right? And this is almost countercultural right now to talk about that spiritual development for children and that self-control. It's interesting, when I mention self-discipline to parents at information sessions, I can watch sometimes that they go, what, young children, self-discipline, because it can almost feel like a bad word. So this work that we're doing is sacred. It is the work. We are creating the new people. No, we're not going to say new man anymore. We're evolving, Dr. Montessori.
Yes, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
The new people, and we have to do it. So anyway, that was the most fun rabbit hole we just went down, and talking big picture. I do want to bring us back to like brass tacks. Can you talk about when you have a child who comes in the classroom they start and they're 4 or they're 5, they don't have any of those foundational elements. How are you supporting them if they come in and they can be dysregulated, they can have off-track behavior, they may be, I have seen where they can come in and have some social power and they start to pull others towards, kind of this off-track behavior that doesn't support the community as a whole. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I did have children that came with no Montessori experience and were highly dysregulated and needed extra support. And Maria Montessori talks in one of her books that when you have this type of child that comes into your environment, that's the child that's going to need the most attention from you.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to infuse the love to that child. What does that mean? You're going to give them and entice them with a lot of these lessons that now we're using them as kind of redirection lessons, but you can use, we have spoken language activities that we can do with them. Mm-hmm. We have grace and courtesy that we can do with them. You can go and take them to the garden and do some maybe planting something, working with some vegetables and repotting things outside in the garden. Or like my friend that was digging and putting some mulch in a wheelbarrow. I had another child that was carrying the laundry and bringing the laundry, carrying heavy things. So you're going to need to do activities to get them out of that space where they want to call attention because they're dysregulated. And like I said, first you're going to entice. You're going to use music, movement, reading, anything at your disposal. And Maria Montessori said in the beginning, when you have a child that is dysregulated, or she used the word normalized, anything goes. You can entertain, you can sing, you can dance, you can jump, you can go outside, you can play with a ball, you can kick balls, go on the swings, riding a tricycle, anything goes. Because that child has not developed their will. That child cannot focus. They can't. Their brain and their body and mind are disconnected. The integration of the personality has not happened yet. So what are you going to do? You're just going to love them. They're going to be, they're just going to want to be with you because you're that source of love all the time. Yes, and it's going to be a lot for you and your assistant. You're going to have to take turns in the beginning. But then one day that child, because they see you are going to be that, you're going to be the work for them in the beginning, right? You're going to be that activity for them in the beginning. Oh, Miss Veronica is going to entertain me. That's okay, because that's what you need right now. Then there's going to be a point, and in the meantime, you're going to start pairing them. And I had this child, what we did is we pair them with one child that was highly regulated, an older child, just one. Every single day, we infuse grace and courtesy several times a day.
What does that mean?
We gave lessons on grace and courtesy several times a day.
So what
targeted lessons?
Basic. Okay, can you talk more about that
specifically? This child could not line up. There was no way he could line up. He was just biting, poking, kicking, pushing. He could not line up. So this child needed to have grace and courtesy just to how to stand in line. That's the grace and courtesy he had first with just one child that was highly regulated, that was a great role model, and me or my assistant, and the three of us did a small group, just that grace and courtesy, how to stand in line. And we did that for a week, every single day, several times a day, the same one. And every day he would poke and push until one day he was just standing very nicely, waiting in line to go up. And we were like, okay, booms, he's ready. He has that grace and courtesy down. Then another one, another grace and courtesy is that when we were sitting at lunch, for example, he would knock over his chair and fall down on the floor, sometimes knock over his food. So we did grace and courtesies and how to sit on a chair. How do we sit? And that was very basic grace and courtesy lessons.
Wow.
Right?
Yep.
And we did that several times a day with 2 or 3 children that were highly regulated, that could be great role models. And we pair him during the day with these children to eat lunch, for example, or snack, so that he would have these role models because the child has the absorbent mind, so they can take in all those behaviors. And if you repeat those often, they integrate them. It becomes part of who they are. After 3 years in the classroom, there and this child had diagnosed, he was a diverse learner. He had a special need, and the parents told me, Veronica, like, this is a different child. Like, from 3 years ago, who he was when he came into your environment, who he is now. This was a child that could focus. This was a child that could walk around, navigate his environment, courteous to his friends, social. He could look at them in the eyes. He could respond properly, modulating his voice. Like, all these things that did not happen 3 years ago just were happening after that 3rd year. The parents were grateful. But of course, and that's another important thing that you have to do as a guide, you have to build good relationships with parents. They need to know that you have the best interest of their child at heart, and they need to know and see how much you love their child, because then they're going to trust you. So these parents saw the amount of attention and love that my whole team poured on this child, but they just trusted me, and they were supporting me at home as well, doing grace and courtesies at home, and doing all the things that we did in the environment. I talked to them, created reports for them, and they were also translating that into the home environment. So that, of course, if you work as a team, then of course it's going to happen, and you're going to see the results. But I was meticulous about my environment, meticulous about training my assistant, meticulous about the work I had to do on myself to become the guide that I needed to be for that child. I had to put all my prejudices aside, any preconceived ideas that I had, anything that could be an obstacle for me to see the child with faith. This child has the potential inside. All children have it, and I'm not going to lose faith. And it did. It happened. I was crying. I remember the 2nd year when I saw this child just walking around, taking out his work, working. Miss Veronica, I'm ready for a new lesson. And I was like, what happened? Like, oh my God, like, finally, this child. And then he was mentored to others, and he was helping others. And I'm just in love with Montessori. I love it because it's beautiful. It is work. It's hard work. I never want to say it's going to happen magically. It's not. But if you do it right, it's just the most beautiful thing you can do for the world and for the children.
I just need you to know, if you're listening and you're not watching this on YouTube, that Veronica and I are both crying. I think everybody should know that. That was so beautiful. And that child's life is changed for their entire life, because they may never have built those skills. They may never have known that they could operate with that much self-control. And self-control, self-discipline, they fuel everything for us, right? They fuel everything for us. Okay, so there's so much we can talk about. You just said training your assistant. I want to have you back. We can talk about that sometime, right?
Of course, yes.
But what else? We have probably about 5 minutes left. What have you not talked about that is like a cornerstone of building self-control? Is there anything else that we need to talk about? I know you talked about freedom. We haven't talked really about responsibility.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
And we talked about a little bit about that, but I also wanted to talk about something you talked about when we were talking about this child and how he probably felt, after that 3rd year. I want to talk about independence.
Okay.
Because and it goes along with responsibility, because what happens is, what we were saying is that, how can you give to the world? How can you become that member of society that is thinking of others, loving others, caring for others? What is it? Think about it. How do you do that? When you feel competent. A person that doesn't feel competent, that doesn't feel independent enough to do things, will not help others, because they're like, I don't know how to do that. So what we're doing is we're giving children skills little by little through the activities we do, because we scaffold every activity and build on challenge, right? So that the child feels more competent each time. When they leave the classroom, they feel competent. They feel they have skills that they skillful to offer what they know to others. That's why they're so eager to help the younger child, because they have all the knowledge and they're just ready to help someone because I just acquired that knowledge. I know how to tie my shoes. I want to tie your shoe because I'm so good at it. I know, can I help you put on your apron and make that beautiful bow because I just learned how to make a bow, you know? They want to help others. They just love it. And if we don't feel competent, we cannot help others. Every time we do something we make a choice, right? And we're building the way, we're developing our will, right? We make a choice. We complete it. We feel competent. That gives us independence. Independence helps us to want to help others, right? And then you also, every time you make a choice, it comes with the responsibility that we were talking about of completing that activity, completing whatever it is that you chose to do. So everything is built in, everything you develop. When you make a choice and you complete it to the best of your capabilities with the skills you have, because you have been matched to an activity that is right for you, you're building independence, you're building competence, and you're being responsible for that activity that you took out or that choice that you made. Even if it's the choice to help someone else, you know, how are you going to help that person? Because you have the skills and knowledge to offer to others, right? So that I wanted to talk about independence, because without independence and without feeling competent and independent to help others, there's no way we can be that human that rises above and wants to help others, right? And we do that every single day in the environment. Yeah.
Like superheroes.
Yes,
I
they
mean,
are.
really.
That's what they are. Every child is a superhero in the
Every
classroom.
child is a superhero, and every Montessori guide, every Montessori, the ones who are deeply in it doing this work. Come on, these are the people these are our heroes. So it is, Veronica, it has been so fun to talk to you. I mean, I just feel so grateful that these new people who are new in lead guide roles, or people who may be feeling like they need some support, that they have access to you and you can support them every week as they work through their school year, and the children will have the blessing of your support as well. Just feel very grateful.
Thank you, Tamara. I'm excited and just blessed to be working with you, and I just hope that a lot of the things that I've learned throughout the years, I can just pass them along, and I can just support other guides that are there where I was many years ago. And if it wasn't for the support that I had from my two mentors, one of them was Julia. Julia's working with me with the mentoring communities. It would have been a much harder journey. So having a good mentor is just really essential.
It's the key. It is the key. There's no reason that anybody should have to do all of this on their own and be isolated. It can be such isolating work. I remember when I started out in a Montessori classroom, my first year I was a self-directed intern. I taught lower L, and I think my person from my training came by 2 to 3 times. And then my head of school came in once. And that was it the whole year, right? And I have to tell you, I don't think I didn't teach geometry all year. I was so overwhelmed. I desperately wish, for the benefit of those children, that I'd had something like this to support me along the way, because we shouldn't have to be in there by ourselves. There's so many experts out there, and we've got to band together. We've got to come together and support each other. So thank you. And this has been so fun and such good information. Really a pleasure.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Okay, and to our listeners, we are so grateful for you. The truth is that the work you're doing is the work. You are creating the new people, and it is a Montessori revolution, and we are all in this together, and we are better together. We are grateful for you. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, greenspringcenter.org, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.